Thank you for listening to SimpliPodcast. This is Captain Alon Perek. One thing that I know for a fact is that most of the people can overcome the fear of flying. Another fact is that there are many ways to do it. Our app, SimpliFly, is one of them, but there are other methods and programs that can help people in their struggle. One path is through hypnotherapy. I came across Victoria Ann Spencer Kibble via the web and asked her to talk with me in this podcast, but little did I know how her story would take us with her from the skies down to bottom of the ocean and eventually on the ground. SimpliPodcast with Victoria Ann Spencer Kibble. Ready for takeoff. Victoria, thank you for joining me on another SimpliPodcast by SimpliFly.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure, Alan.
I normally start this meeting with a brief intro of my guest's history, just to get started. But in your case, this is absolutely mandatory to know where you come from to understand what are you doing today. Let's start with your career in aviation.
I started flying in 1996. It was always my dream as a little girl to fly and travel the world. And I actually got the notification that I was being kept on permanently in New York City. So all dreams came true and I absolutely loved my flying career. So I progressed from being a standard cabin crew to the senior cabin crew through to flight supervisor. Unfortunately, in 2009, I was due to go flying the 1st of June. Unfortunately, my first husband passed away on the 24th of May, so I wasn't able to continue that beloved flying career just purely because I had two bereaved children left at home and I was doing long haul.
Would you say a couple of words about what happened there?
Carl, my late Carl, he was filming a Britannic expedition. He was filming for a documentary commissioned by National Geographic. Unfortunately, on the 24th of May was the first day that he actually got in the water to actually enter the Marconi room. The Marconi room is where, the easiest way to explain it to the everyday man is the ... kind of machine. And there's only very few known to be left in this world, and basically they're on shipwrecks.
Carl Spencer was one of the world's most accomplished divers who was killed while leading a National Geographic expedition filming a documentary about the Britannic, sister ship of the Titanic, which sank in the Aegean Sea in 1916.
His last known picture underwater is actually entering that area, and he left also a reel leading into that said room as well. But unfortunately, things occurred where he didn't get to the surface and, unfortunately passed away at the age of 39, just a tragic accident.
So this tragic accident catches you at the middle of your career as a cabin crew and forces you to change the path of your career. What do you do then?
Well, because I got two bereaved children, they were only 3 and 8 at the time, I decided to do something that would enable me to be around for the children. It was so important. Those early years, especially before the age of 8, we are in what we call the subconscious mind. And we're like sponges. It's why we teach children English language and maths, i.e. times table, when we do, because they're like sponges, they absorb it. And that's because they're in the theta brainwave state, subconscious mind. So as my kids were only 3 and 8, I decided to go into teaching. I got offered a job down at the local school where the children attended, in this beautiful village that Carl brought us across to. Unfortunately, he only got a year at this house. I was at school, and I still am at school. I taught there as a higher level teaching assistant around special needs children. So I understand how they work subconsciously, their mind. Everything that they take on is incredible at that age. but it was also important for my own children that they took on things that would help them throughout life as bereaved children, because I couldn't take away what actually happened, but I could give them phenomenal coping skills for the rest of their life. So I joined the school in 2011 as a volunteer, and then I was taken on permanently in 2012, and I've been there ever since. But I decided in 2018 there was just something that was kind of missing, that I really enjoyed the mind and how the mind worked. Hence I'm quite fascinated by the subconscious mind, because after I lost Carl and there was such stress that I had to deal with, there's quite a backstory there that possibly could be in a book in me, definitely. I decided that because he'd lost his life underwater to brain oxemia, so the bends, I became fascinated with the brain. But I was also dealing with the loss of possibly having to sell the house, loss of my job, my career that I loved so much, and the loss for the children as well. It's the past memories and the future memories that you would have made. So unfortunately, 18 months after I lost Carl, I actually had 8 seizures in one singular hour.
Wow.
And obviously seizures, again, the brain. 1 in 5 adults survive. 4 out of 5 actually pass away through it. So I'm extremely lucky to be here, and don't I know it?
After losing her beloved husband, Carl, and forced to leave her flying career to focus on taking care of her 2 children, these brain seizures threatened to knock Victoria down. Let's admit it, some would give up at that time. But apparently Victoria is not made of that material. Plus, she's already fascinated by the ability to train people through this subconscious level.
Once that happened, I decided, right, I need to do something more. There's more of a purpose in me, and it was very much around the brain and the subconscious mind. So that's when I started to train in therapy, and I absolutely love it. So at this point now, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, as well as trained in the Erickson Milton hypnotherapy as well, which is incredible and very rapid. So there isn't years of therapy. All of us want everything very, very quick now, don't we? We want it instantly. So the therapy that I do is very rapid.
So this roller coaster life journey leads you from the air down to the ocean and then to education. You start to understand that things are not only on the surface, sometimes they are in the back of our brains, in the subconscious level. And then you get to hypnotherapy, which leads you eventually to what we are here for, the fear of flying.
Well, because it's a career that I loved. Alan, if I still flew now, I think it would be my 26th year if I still flew, and I would still fly if I could right now.
Yes.
Life's journey sent me on a different path, and I'm okay with that. But I want people to experience, especially nervous, anxious passengers, I want them to experience the difference that taking a flight, yes, there are beautiful places in the countries that we live in ourselves, but this is a wonderful planet we live on. And I want that exploration that Carl did through his documentaries, I want that to continue as well. And if we don't fly, that won't happen. I loved flying, and I would identify very, very quickly if somebody, through their body language normally, if they were anxious. Sometimes, yes, it was the person who'd perhaps got a little bit drunk in the airport, early morning check-in and having a beer at 6 o'clock in the morning, not always appropriate. But I didn't ever judge, because I knew that sometimes that person was actually very fearful of flying, and they were just around a stressed situation. Or the other part that would happen would be that people would take medication and not realise how much it would affect you up in the air against on the ground level. And of course, then there were other passengers who blatantly came up to you and said, I'm terrified of flying. I feel trapped. I can't get out. What happens? They didn't understand how a plane could be up in the air. So I kind of find there's three types, where we've got the people who want to know more knowledge. We've got the people who've been through an event, and that includes on board. And then we've got the third level, which is a little bit deeper and goes into the subconscious mind, where there's trauma, and that's in the subconscious mind.
I like this distinction between these three types of fearful flyer that you are talking about. Let me offer another angle. I've just spoke with a man that haven't flown from 2008, 14 years ago. The reason for his fear was a turbulence event in flight that was not digested properly, and it grew up in his mind to be a monstrous event. He told me about a recent family vacation in which they had to take a domestic flight, but eventually his wife and daughter flew and he drove all the way. At this point I asked him, "Do you understand that you are not afraid of flying?" And he said, "What do you mean? I called you because I am afraid of flying." So I answered, "But you are not worried about your wife and daughter flying. If you had the slightest concern about the safety of the flight, you wouldn't allow them to fly and would insist they would drive with you. So you're not afraid of flying. You're afraid of the fear of flying." This story demonstrates what I'm talking about. I therefore tend to find out if the person is mostly worried about the safety of the flight, or are they more afraid of the fear, or afraid of being in a situation in which they will be very fearful and they will have nothing to do about it.
Out of control, routine, feeling trapped, can't get out. Those are huge. And around all of those, the claustrophobia, but the fear of flying, yes, absolutely.
How do you approach these people? How do you help them?
What I offer them is a transformation, because there isn't just one layer normally. So
I love it that you call it transformation, by the way. You're not fixing them, you're not healing them, you're not correcting them, you are helping them to do a transformation. And I love it. I just had
absolutely. It's their transformation, so they have flying confidence. Yes. So it doesn't just affect that getting up in a steel tube in the air at 37,000 feet. It actually gives them confidence in daytime as well. Yes. So what I do is I watch for a lot. I do two types of therapy, and I use whoever presents in front of me. I use what I feel is going to be best for them. Some people are very logical, so they work with their conscious mind. Some people are very emotional and they work with their subconscious mind. But the subconscious mind is always running in the background. Yes. And all our beliefs are made before the age of 8. This is where the teaching part of me comes into effect, where I know that they will have absorbed something. Sometimes it can be as simple as a book, a movie, a scenario, a teacher saying something in a classroom, and they've suddenly developed that fear of flying. But that's just the symptom. The reason, the cause is deeper.
In other words, the event that triggered the fear sometimes lies far away in the past and may have nothing to do with flying. Can you give us an example?
So, for example, I had a lady who was 74 years young, never flew. And when we went back into her subconscious mind, into a memory where it first started, she went back to where her 4 siblings, one being the youngest sister living in New Zealand, and that's why she wanted to fly, because it was after COVID. And she went back to a memory where she was one of 4 siblings. The other 3 actually trapped her in the ottoman at the bottom of the bed, doing what children do. And that obvious feeling that she didn't know that that's where her fear of flying came from, but because she was trapped in that ottoman, she felt like she couldn't get out. She couldn't understand that very narrow feeling, and it affected her when she went into toilets. It affected her going on train rides. It affected her being in small places, but most of all, it had stopped her the whole of her life from flying. And to go and see her sibling, which she has since done,
Wow.
is just extraordinary to me, that we can do that. We can release that fear and overcome it, and we can do it quickly as well. It is a transformation, so I will give you as much support as I possibly can, one through my flying experience, but also through my teaching experience, and then also through my therapy experience.
This is perfect, V. Using the combination of your experience and skills from your flying career, your experience as a teacher with a focus on the unconscious level of the mind, and finally the hypnotherapy, you helped the lady to find out where the fear of flying was born. And now you could train her to release this part in her life. We see these people in flight and gosh, what a burden they carry, don't they?
You and I both know we can instantly see people on board the aircraft who possibly are feeling very anxious, even if they don't tell us. Their body language, which is 55% of our language, you can tell, you can see it. So I think each and every career that I've been through actually has got to me where I am now.
Doing a little mathematics, that 74 years young lady has created for 60 years of her life this demon that was growing in her mind, and she didn't bother or didn't dare actually to deal with this. And when you took her back into the situation, she acknowledged it, understood that she was driven by a small girl that was trapped under the bed, and that gave her the strength to do the transformation by herself and fly to New Zealand, which is half of the world travel distance, which is astonishing.
It's reframing, rewiring a belief that happened many, many years ago. But sometimes there's also what I call unconscious moments. So people will perhaps look down when I ask them a question, and if I am as blunt to say, what's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
They'll suddenly go, see how I look up there? They have, because I've got them from logical thinking to emotional thinking, conscious mind to subconscious mind, I know the next words after that unconscious moment are really, really important to them. So their words matter in their mind. My opinion does not matter. I love flying, you love flying. So it's important to listen to who's presenting what in front of you. It's in their mind, and their words can be very, very different to ours. And it's like untying a knot in a shoelace, and you untie the knots. So eventually that shoelace is straight, and then they go away and they kind of still are reprogramming, rewiring. But then when they get on the flight and they actually sit back and kind of either fall asleep, find it so easy to fly, or can't quite believe that actually, why didn't I do this years ago? But there's such a stigma to, let's call it mental health, but anxiety, stress and fears. There's such a stigma to it. And there shouldn't be, because we have one life. And being widowed at 37, I made sure that I was going to live that life. One, for a late husband, but also for my present second husband and my two gorgeous, beautiful, bereaved children. We get one chance, make the most of every single moment.
Let me ask you, how does the process look like? How do you start your interaction with the people who approach you?
What I do is, first of all, I do a calendar link, which leads to a discovery call with me. And that's a conversation where I need to hear from you, and you may do it by an unconscious moment or your words that you use. I need to know you're ready to change, because there's certain people, If they're not ready, they will continue driving cross-country whilst their family are flying.
I had an interesting meeting with an NLP master who is helping people with the fear of flying. And one of the things that he said to me is that people always adopt behaviors like refraining from things because they feel that they gain something out of it. Is this one of the things that you look for in this discovery meeting? If the person is not ready yet and still holding on to that imaginary profit?
Yeah, absolutely. So that gain is giving them something, i.e. it's keeping them safe, but actually it's holding them back at the same time. So for me, what I would use then is I would use the technique that Milton Erickson used, where I would wait for that unconscious moment where they may scratch their nose, they may start twiddling their hair, and then I would ask them a specific question which would lead to why they're resisting to change. And I kind of like those clients because they give me something to really get my teeth into and unravel that travel, I call it. So they can actually have that flying confidence. So yes, there's a gain to why they fear. So I'll ask them, and it's asking the right questions for their language as well, because I'm not going to overcomplicate it. I'm not going to use language that you don't understand. I will use your language because your language matters in your mind.
So you have learned about the person, and you define that that person is ready for that transformation. What's next? Next?
Then the next part is they book a session with me, and the first initial session I do the transformation over a period of 3 months, because the mind likes what's familiar, i.e. the routine thing. It likes repetition, so we need to reframe that old belief, I fear flying, to I have flying confidence. And then I do that first initial session, and so we see where we are after that. For some people, that's actually enough, and that seems bizarre, but it's incredible. But for other people, i.e. they may be drinking to get on board the aircraft, that's a different symptom. They may have irritable bowel syndrome, and you and I both know that some flights there are people where they'll ask you to block off toilets because they are so fearful, their anxiety is so heightened that they keep having to go to the toilet.
Irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS, is a common disorder that affects the large intestine and may be caused by emotional stress, tension, or anxiety. Many people report such symptoms while they are under much stress, but to the best of my knowledge, people do not develop chronic IBS due to fear of flying.
So there's an additional symptom to that fear of flying, but I want to give you a transformation. I don't want to just get you to where you'll just board an aircraft and suffer it. I actually want you to feel, sometimes people enjoy it, some people feel indifferent to it. It's neither good nor bad. They just understand it's the journey to get to where they want to get to. So it depends on the person again in front of me, but over the period of 3 months, I want a transformation off you so you can fly with flying confidence with every flight for the rest of your life, and there's nothing holding you back.
Just like yours, our goal in SimpliFly is not to eliminate the fear of flying completely. The aim is that the fear of flying will not rule their lives and will not prevent them from enjoying the benefits of air travel. And around 90% of the people that went through the SimpliFly program achieved this goal. Getting back to your program, the VASC, I understand that in a period of 3 months, you normally reach that goal. Is it a weekly meeting?
So the first meeting, I like to follow up after 21 days because the habit of change or habit of thought or repetitive thinking tends to take 21 days. So I want to give some time for that reframing, that working through.
And they have homework to do during these 21 days?
So I may give you a recording that will overcome that fear of flying, overcome that having the need, and it's only a need, to drink alcohol, so to get on board the aircraft, or having the need to have a tablet. Or the other end is where people feel unsafe. So there isn't a need number feeling anymore. There's a different symptom of they either have fear of heights, they have claustrophobia, they have the fear of feeling unsafe. Then, because they're driven, they have the fear of failure for their family. I find that a lot of moms, once they become a mom, then the responsibility of having a young family with them.
That's also, by the way.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yes.
That's huge, because they've got this responsibility for this little being sitting next to them.
Yeah, I have 5 daughters, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So in a period of 21 days, the first 21 days, you are dealing with this. And after this one, you meet again.
Yeah, I do internationally via Zoom, Google Meets, or I do it in person. I've actually got a therapy room based in my house, which has got all aircraft paraphernalia in, including the film Airplane, where the airplane is tied in a knot. The irony of that. It's a bit like, people say I've got knots in my stomach when I fly, or my stomach's doing somersaults, or I feel sick. And no wonder when the movie, the Aeroplane, actually had a knotted plane. But who's to know whether your mind subconsciously, because it's always recording, running in the background, took on that belief? It's exactly the same as the Jaws movie. And they actually regretted doing that movie, because afterwards they turned to conservation, because they realised the destruction that it did. But it's already out there. And do people need to have that fear of water either? But again, it's the fear of water, the fear of aircraft, the fear of flying. Very, very similar fears.
I totally agree. Life is filled with events that can trigger anxiety. And the quicker we identify these past events, the better are the chances that we can overcome them. But I've learned today that you can go back even 60 years and fix or untie that knot in the head. It's just awesome. So, we're 21 days after your program started, and guys, we can do it from anywhere in the world, which is amazing because you can connect via Google Meet and do that transformation from far away. Now, 21 days have gone. You guys meet again. And what happens next?
Some people may need a further session. So I have up to four sessions in those 3-month period. But I gauge on how the person is actually willing to change and how much effort they need to put some effort in, i.e. if I've given them a recording, they need to listen to the recording. So there is some onus and some homework on the client as well. But the success rate that I'm getting is extraordinary, because I think, one, my love of flying, one, my teaching background and knowing about the subconscious mind. And I've taught within primary school in the UK, which is up to the age of 10. So I know that juicy, gorgeous, sponge-like subconscious mind that children have. And then obviously the training that I've had with the different modalities that I do within my therapy. So, but it's very personalized to you. So it's to who's sitting in front of me. This isn't just a generic recording.
Your homework, dear listeners, will include listening to personalized recordings that you'll get from Victoria, and the training of your subconscious mind will be very much based on listening to these recordings. The SimpliFly approach to the fear of flying is purely not treatment, but we also want you to train your brains to use the facts. Therefore, we are giving people with SimpliFly video and audio clips with pure knowledge. What part has the knowledge in helping the people overcome the fear?
Knowledge for a lot of people is enough. That's all they need to know, knowledge of the understanding of where it comes from. And for some people it is that they crave that information of how does an aircraft actually fly? What is turbulence? How does the airplane get lift? What happens if it's raining on takeoff? A lot of people are very, very scared because of weather conditions, yet we don't think of it when we're actually driving in a car, which air is a force and we're driving against that same force when we're driving a car. But when it comes down to an aircraft, we're very fearful. But a lot of the time that comes to the feeling of feeling out of control and wanting to be in control and feeling safe. So there's many, like I say, the fear of flying is just the symptom. We need to understand with knowledge where it comes from. So I think the SimpliFly is literally covering all avenues of knowledge, events and trauma.
I would say that if a person really thinks that flying is not safe, then there is no way we can help that person until we satisfy this fear with facts. Now, once this person understands that this fear is not really based on facts, then we can move on and go to the subconscious and untie these knots in the background to allow people to do this.
You just said something really interesting listening to your words just then, and blue is a significant colour in this house, aquamarine blue, because obviously the blue of the sky, hence the colours in my logo, but also the aquamarine of the ocean. A lot of passengers who have a fear of flying say the words, this fear just comes out of the blue. And they'll actually feel it when they drive, for example, over a bridge. I don't know where it comes from, it just comes out of the blue. So for me then, I would wait for an unconscious moment, which could be a scratch, could be a sneeze, could be a cough, could be their voice going funny, because this is the unconscious mind that's kind of going, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And then I'll ask them, what is that blue for you? Because that blue means something. It comes out of the blue. And it's really strange because my late husband, we used to have a saying between each other that legends are born out the blue, because so many things happen with flying and the ocean that has been so significant in our lives, certainly, and my children's lives, that, like legends are born out of the blue.
This was a fascinating meeting to me. Thank you for joining us today, Victoria.
My pleasure. Honestly, it's been a wonderful conversation, hopefully giving people inspiration to actually have that flying confidence and enjoy life.
Don't forget to look down here in the text and see how you can reach Victoria and Spencer Kibble and start transforming your lives. We are already working on the next chapter. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.